There's another reason to avoid highly processed foods, however, and that has to do with what's called emulsifiers. Now, many of you are familiar with emulsifiers, even though you don't know it. When you put detergent in the laundry, that it contains emulsifiers. The goal of that detergent is to bring together fatty molecules with water molecules and be able to dissociate them and break them up to get the stains out of clothes and things of that sort. There are a lot of emulsifiers put into processed foods. And those emulsifiers allow certain chemical reactions to occur that extends the shelf life of those foods. So it's like candy bars and cereals and all sorts of things that are in processed foods. The worst of which are the typical kind of pastries that you see at the convenience store. But this extends into chips of various kinds and even some meats of various kinds. They pack this stuff into meats. They have names like soy lecithin and other things. Why are emulsifiers bad? Okay, there are a lot of reasons why they're bad, but the reason why they're bad for the mechanisms that we've been talking about today is that when you ingest those foods, you're bringing those emulsifiers into your gut, and those emulsifiers strip away the mucosal lining of the gut, and they actually cause the neurons that innervate the gut, that extend those little processes we call axons into the gut, to retract deeper into the gut. And as a consequence, you're ingesting a bunch of food and the signals like CCK never get deployed. The signals that actually shut down hunger are never actually triggered. And so as a consequence, you want to eat far more of these highly processed foods. In addition, if you then go from eating a highly processed food to non-highly processed foods, you're not able to measure the amounts of amino acids, sugars, and fatty acids in those foods as accurately. You've actually done structural damage at a micro level, but structural level damage, to the mucosal lining of the gut. Now, this can all be repaired if you stay away from highly processed foods for some period of time, but the negative effects of these emulsifiers are quite real. So to make it really clean and simple, emulsifiers from highly processed foods are limiting your gut's ability to detect what's in the foods you eat and therefore to deploy the satiety signals, the signals that shut down hunger. In addition to that, there's a parallel mechanism at play that I talked about in a previous episode, but I'll remind you again that you have neurons in your gut that are sensing sugar and are sending a subconscious signal up to the brain via the vagus nerve. And those neurons trigger the release of dopamine, which makes you crave more of that food. So now you've got parallel signals making you want to eat more sugar, making you unaware of how much sugar you've eaten, and that are disrupting the inputs to the nervous system that signal to the rest of your brain and body that you've obtained enough fatty acids and you've obtained enough amino acids. So these highly processed foods are really terrible. And, I'm not out here to say, never enjoy a processed food of any kind. I'd be a hypocrite because I do eat processed foods from time to time, although the ones that I tend to eat, I try and make of the healthier variety. But eating whole foods has tremendous value, and eating highly processed food has tremendous negative impact on the gut and on the gut-brain axis. And so recently there was a paper that came out in Cell Press Journal. It's kind of the apex of Cell journals, which is phenomenal. This paper showed that ingesting highly processed food leads to more intake of not just highly processed foods, but other types of food in general. There was kind of an overeating compensation generally across foods for people that consume these highly processed foods. And there are a lot of other reasons to avoid highly processed foods. So again, I don't like to focus too much on the do nots. I like to arm you with tools to do, but I think this visual of certain foods and these emulsifiers actually stripping away some of the critical lining of your gut and disrupting the hormone signaling to the brain controlling feeding is important enough and cryptic enough, meaning it hasn't been talked about, it works at a subconscious level, and that it's important that people are aware of it so they can make decisions about what they do want to eat or not want to eat for themselves. Before moving on, I just want to say one